Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping straight into an absolutely incredible true story. It's got brilliant military strategy, mind-blowing individual heroism, and a very real, modern-day battle just to preserve history. We're talking about the 1965 Battle of As-Lutar, a totally defining moment in military history, and we're looking at the legacy of the man who stood right at the center of it all.
Okay, let's kick things off with a number that literally altered the course of the 1965 war. 97. That massive number is the total amount of Pakistani tanks destroyed during this one single battle. The destruction was so absolute, just totally devastating, that the nearby town of Bikiwind actually became an open-air tank graveyard for a while. Locals literally started calling it Patanagar because of the sheer volume of defeated American-made Patton tanks just left rusting in the dirt. But, how exactly does something like that happen?
To really understand the stakes here, you have to picture the sheer technological mismatch. I mean, on one side, you've got the absolute pride of the Pakistani Armored Division, the US-built Patton tank. We're talking 46 tons of heavy steel armor, 90mm main guns, and, for the time, cutting-edge infrared night vision. And facing them, an open-top, completely exposed Indian Jeep carrying a 106mm recoilless or RCL gun. It is the ultimate David versus Goliath scenario. The Indian forces had virtually zero armor protection. They just had steady nerves and a weapon that forced them to get incredibly, dangerously close to the enemy just to take a shot.
So how in the world did David beat Goliath here? Well, heavily outgunned and staring down a massive armored offensive that was heading straight for the holy city of Amritsar, the Indian 4th Mountain Division, led by Major General Gurbaksh Singh, pulled off a brilliant strategic retreat. They didn't just run away. They deliberately chose their battlefield. They fell back to the area right around As-Lutar, which, super appropriately, translates to fitting reply.
The actual mechanics of this trap? Honestly, brilliant. First, the Indian forces formed this horseshoe or U-shaped defensive perimeter. Then, and this is where the sheer ingenuity comes in, they used the tall, unharvested sugarcane fields all around them as natural camouflage for their completely exposed jeeps. Finally, they just lure those heavy Patton tanks right into the center of the horseshoe. And the Pakistani tanks, well, they totally took the bait. But those heavy, 46-ton machines quickly got bogged down in the swampy ground hidden in those fields. Suddenly, they're trapped, they're moving in a crawl, and they are completely surrounded by hidden Indian gunners.
But hey, a trap is really only as good as the soldiers executing it, right? Enter Company Quartermaster Veer Abdul Hamid of the 4 Grenadiers. See, the heavier Indian Sherman tanks actually had to be withdrawn because their shells couldn't even dent the Pattons, so the entire defense fell squarely on the shoulders of men like Hamid, manning those incredibly exposed RCL guns. It was his steady nerves and just absolute lethal accuracy that turned this horseshoe trap into a devastating reality.
Before we get into his military feats, it is absolutely fascinating to look at the man himself. Hamid wasn't just a soldier, he was a really multi-dimensional guy. He was the son of a tailor, and surprisingly enough, a highly skilled knitter. But at the same time, he's this burly, 6-foot-tall wrestler. Above all, though, he was fiercely proud and a phenomenal sharpshooter. There's this amazing local story where a wealthy landlord challenged anyone in the area to shoot down this exotic bird. Hamid takes the challenge, hits the impossible shot, but then outright refuses to go collect his reward. He basically told the guy, "If you want to reward me, you come to me." That is exactly the kind of unshakable confidence he brought to the battlefield.
And when the battle actually started, that confidence was put to the ultimate test. September 8th, the Pattons roll in. Showing incredible discipline, Hamid literally waits until the first tank is a mere 30 yards away before he fires. He destroys it, which actually panics the following tank crews so much they abandon their vehicles and run. Then, on September 9th, amidst heavy artillery and terrifying air attacks from Sabre jets, he just methodically knocks out even more tanks. Then comes the morning of September 10th. At 8 a.m., he destroys another leading tank. Finally, right around 9 a.m., alone and totally vulnerable in his open Jeep with concentrated enemy fire raining down, Hamid and the Pakistani tanks spot each other at the exact same time. He fires, taking out his 8th tank of the battle, but is instantly killed by their return fire. For that supreme sacrifice, he was posthumously awarded India's absolute highest military decoration, the Padmanabhir Chakra.
But, the story doesn't just end when the gunfire stops. We have to shift gears here from military history to the really profound reality of the aftermath. Hamid's widow, Rasulun Bibi, captured this perfectly. She once said, "A man dies and it's over for him, but we're right here. It isn't over for us." It is such a sobering reminder. While the hero becomes a national legend, the family is the one left behind. They're the ones who have to survive and carry the massive weight of that legacy in the real world.
And for them, survival was a genuinely grueling struggle. Rasul and Bibi raised her 4 children in poverty. For decades, the family really lacked the resources to navigate the dense, bureaucratic maze for war widow rights. Fast forward to today, and that effort is being championed by Hamid's tech-savvy grandson, Jamil Alam. Jamil essentially acts as a PR manager for his grandmother, fighting to make sure she gets the recognition she deserves. He founded the Legend Veer Abdul Hamid Trust just to keep the history alive. Through these tireless efforts, they actually connected with a New York hotel executive who helped raise $6,200 through global crowdfunding to support Rasulin. It just shows that maintaining the memory of a national hero is a constant, active fight.
Which brings us to something that just happened recently, the 2025 PM Shri School renaming controversy, right in Hamid's native village. This is such a stark, real-world example of the tension between government modernization and preserving historical legacy.
Here's how it went down. For years, the local school where Hamid studied was known as Shahid Hamid Vidyalaya. But in early 2025, under a new National Education Modernization Scheme, the department renamed it to PM Shri Composite School Dimapur, completely erasing Hamid's name in the process. Naturally, this sparked immediate, widespread outrage. Hamid's family, locals, and political figures from all across the spectrum were furious, viewing it as essentially discarding the memory of a national hero. Well, following intense protests and a flurry of official complaints, a compromise was finally struck on February 18, 2025. The school was officially rechristened as the Shahid Veer Abdul Hamid PM Shri Composite School. So it satisfied the modernization requirements while firmly restoring the martyr's name where it belongs.
And that really leaves us with a profound final thought to reflect on today. Preserving history, as we've just seen, is definitely not a passive act. It requires active champions, whether that's a grandson managing paperwork or an entire village standing up to protest a name change. So I'll leave you with this question. When the battle ends, who carries the weight of the legacy? How do we, as a society, balance the inevitable march of time and modernization with our fundamental duty to remember those who sacrificed absolutely everything? Take a moment to think about that. And thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.